So, as mentioned, we were told US President Donald Trump had left a G7 leaders summit in Canada early to work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Later, he denied those claims and instead said he was working on something better than a ceasefire. He's also said he's looking for a complete give up by Tehran. But what would that look like? And what is the president actually thinking? Let's speak to Robert Wilkie, co-chair of the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute, a think tank set up to further Trump's policy aims. He was also Secretary of Veterans Affairs under Trump. Hello to you, Robert Wilkie. What else could Trump be working on if not a ceasefire deal?
Well, I think what you're seeing is the realization, and I agree with some of your comments at the beginning, that no type of transactional analysis, and of course the Great Britain has dealt with this on many fronts, particularly when India and Pakistan divided. Nothing transactional is going to confront forcefully Shia millenarianism on the part of the Ayatollahs. And I think what President Trump is now seeing is that we do have a chance to reshape the Middle East, and not only reshape the Middle East, but weaken two of the main malefactors that you highlighted in your opening remarks, China and Russia. Without the anchor of Iran in the Middle East, their avenues for mischief sort of dry up. And then I'll also say on the Ukrainian front, you've seen, because Putin has rebuffed President Trump's offers for two major ceasefires, long ceasefires, that the trajectory of the American administration has changed. The weapons are flowing again to Ukraine, and Putin is still on the back foot. Your own Ministry of Defense reports that he's now reached the point of 1.1 million casualties. And put that in perspective for the United States, in 10 years of my father's war in Vietnam, we lost 56,000 dead in 10 years, but 300,000 casualties. So this is on a scale much greater than our decade-long involvement in Vietnam.
Right. You use the word transactional, that it wouldn't be possible for a sort of transactional resolution. Do you now accept that Donald Trump's claims that he could solve the world's wars was naive at best and foolhardy at worst?
Well, no, I think it was based on what he saw in his first administration. And if you remember the effects of that, Russia stayed in its box. The one time that they got out of their box, 300 of their soldiers were killed by American forces in the Middle East. When Iran got too close to American troops, Soleimani died. The Iranian economy was bankrupt. The Russian economy was bankrupt. And I think he was looking back on that, hoping that Putin and the Ayatollahs would see what had happened to them in the first 4 years and come to the table.
Right, but then
deal.
Right, but then why isn't the United States getting involved with this Israel-Iran war?
Well, I think it is. No, I think it is very much so.
In what way?
It is supporting the Prime Minister of Israel and the people of Israel.
Right.
American assets have moved forcefully into the region, a sign to the Ayatollahs that if they arm an American, the devastation on Iran would be much greater than that which is being dealt to them by the Israelis.
Yes, you're right. You're right on that particular. Any threats or any harm to American assets, interests or people, then yes, there would be retaliation, but not yet involved in the attacks by Israel on Iran itself, because Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, distanced himself when those strikes happened, first of all. So why? I mean, bearing in mind Israel is the US's most reliable ally in the region against a regime where death to America is regularly chanted, why not come in and help Israel finish the job?
Well, you don't need to right now. Right now, you can allow the Israelis to do what they want to do, backed by the power of the United States. I mean, this has really been our modus operandi since the end of World War II. The Truman Doctrine started it. The Truman Doctrine said the United States will help any of our friends against armed minorities within their country or outside aggression. without putting American troops on the ground. Because if you look at the global reach of the United States, it is still a finite resource because our interests are global. It's not just in the Middle East, it's in the Pacific, Indo-Pacific, and
Yeah.
of course in Europe.
Right, but what else could he be working on then, or what's better than a ceasefire deal? I mean, let's go back to
Well,
diplomacy.
well,
If it is transactional and transactional is not really sophisticated enough to get the sort of
yeah.
deal that has been done with Iran in the past to limit and restrict its enrichment of uranium or moving towards any sort of nuclear weapon, what is better? What's better than that?
By the way, which even the United Nations and the IEA now say was ridiculous, that the Iranians never lived up to any of the agreements they signed. That's just from last week's analysis by Grossi. No, I think what's happening, and I'm not speaking for the administration, I think Netanyahu he is going for regime change and toppling the Ayatollahs once and for all, which I think would be beneficial for the entire world and bring a new day in the Middle East. These people have been at war with the West since 1979. Just give you a quick example in my own childhood. After we left Britain in the 1970s, my father was back at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and the colonel who lived across the street was one of the hostages in Tehran taken by the so-called students in 1979. So we have been in a de facto, if not a de jure war with the Iranians since then. They've befuddled Ronald Reagan. They've befuddled the Bushes. And now, because of the Israelis saying enough and enough is enough and destroying their axis of resistance, and also
But
the
they can't.
Russians have been chased out of Syria. Now is the time that the Israelis believe that they can permanently alter.
Well,
the
but that's
state of
disputed that they alone can permanently do that. They would need the Americans. They would need the American military might, the bunker busting sort of military equipment to actually end it. Otherwise, they'll diminish it, perhaps, but maybe the
but if you
regime
look-
stays in place and
yeah.
then they rebuild.
I'll tell you one of the things that changed is the operational reach and effectiveness of the Israeli military. So what do I mean by that? What they did to Nasrallah in Beirut, where they were able, with new weaponry, to collapse a bunker system that was 14 stories below the surface, much deeper than the 100 yards on Fordo and Natanz that they are under the surface. I think they have seen a change in their operational effectiveness, which gives them more flexibility in terms of getting at Iran. But remember,
Right.
look, no one has more experience in the Middle East than the historical experience of the United Kingdom. And the one thing that is happening there right now is principally psychological. The last thing any authoritarian regime in the Middle East wants to appear to its people
Yes.
is weak and ineffectual. And the Ayatollahs have spent billions on their axis of resistance, and yet the energy goes off in Tehran at 8 or 9 at night. I remember as a child in Britain when the BBC went off at 9 or 10 o'clock at night because of the oil crisis in the 1970s.
Yes.
But this is a nation that's sitting on the third largest reserve of energy on the planet, and they can't even supply their own people.
Well, Robert Wilkie, can I just interject and move you on to something else very briefly before I let you go? And that's any thoughts you have on the UK-US trade deal, clearly welcomed by the UK's Prime Minister, but you could argue it was pretty thin, even if it is welcomed. How likely do you think there'll be a tariff exemption on UK steel, which didn't happen yesterday?
I think there will be, and the evidence of that is that we just agreed to the Japanese purchase of United States steel. And that's the precursor. The president, when I was in the first administration, we were really close to a comprehensive trade deal with the UK, which Joe Biden threw out the window, as well as he threw out the bust of Winston Churchill from the Oval Office. So you have a very different view of the United Kingdom, and thankfully so. Our closest historic, spiritual, political partner on the planet.
All right.
And So I think, yes, you will get a more comprehensive deal.
Robert Wilkie from the America First Policy Institute, thank you very much for joining us.